Now we're going to have a panel on oceans.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. My name is Dakota Peebler. I am 13 years old, and I'm a founding member of Heirs to Our Oceans. Heirs to Our Oceans is an international nonprofit organization dedicated to the empowerment, education, and connection of youth globally to protect the waters of our blue planet for us and future generations. I have a huge connection to the oceans and have always had one as someone who's going to be inheriting it. And so the issue I'm going to be talking about is a personal one for me, and that is the overuse of chemical fertilizers. So nitrogen and phosphorus-filled chemical fertilizers have been overused for many years, and today they're being overused in golf courses, agriculture, and in our own homes. And actually, the use of commercial fertilizers started many, many years ago, including in the pre- and post-World War II era. And the issue is, when we overuse chemical fertilizers, a lot of it isn't absorbed by the plants, and a lot of it runs down into water systems such as freshwater and our coastal marine ecosystems. And in those water systems stimulates algae, along with the warming of our waters due to climate change. And this algae blooms in large amounts. And the problem is, some algae produce toxins when they bloom. We have a problem on the California coast due to a diatom called Pseudonychia. When it blooms, it produces a neurotoxin called domoic acid. And domoic acid accumulates in shellfish and small fish. And when it's consumed, it affects the hippocampus, and that is a part of the brain that is associated with navigation, memory, and emotions. And when humans consume large amounts of domoic acid, it can end up in amnesic shellfish poisoning, which has many different problems, including on large scale, short-term memory loss, comas, and in extreme cases, death. And then another problem with harmful algal blooms for humans is respiratory problems, because some algae release their toxins into the air. In animals, domoic acid causes disorientation, lethargy, seizures, and sometimes death. And this is a problem that is prevalent for sea lions and sea otters. Some of you may know that sea otters are very, very important, as they are a keystone species that protects kelp. And kelp is a huge marine ecosystem, provides oxygen for us, and absorbs large amounts of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. We actually, in 2015 to 2016, California had a large Pseudonychia bloom up and down its coast, and it went all the way up into Washington. And it was said that domoic acid concentrations in Monterey Bay reached 10 to 30 times the level that would be considered high for a normal Pseudonychia bloom. So this is a real problem, and it's happening now, and it's overlooked. Another issue that comes with nutrient runoff due to chemical fertilizers, along with the warming of our waters due to climate change, is dead zones. And that is when we have the algae dying, and when it decomposes, it sucks up the oxygen from the water, and it leaves large areas of lifeless water. And we actually have a really big issue of it in the Gulf of Mexico, where every year they suffer from a huge dead zone the size of New Jersey. And if you look here, streams and rivers connect down into the Gulf of Mexico, coming straight from farms and cities. And there is a lot of nutrient pollution coming from those areas. Not only is this a problem for our oceans, it's a problem for humans. Like I said, a lot of the excess nitrogen that is not absorbed by the plants enters the ocean, and then some of it enters groundwater. And when it enters groundwater, it caused many, many problems. And actually, the UC Davis Agricultural Sustainability Institute reported in 2016 that nearly 419,000 tons of nitrogen leach into groundwater every year in California. And contaminated water can end up in a lot of issues. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see them here on the slide. And this issue is happening right here in California. Could the Pescadero heirs please stand up? Pescadero has had a large issue due to nitrates that have contaminated their drinking water. And I'm going to read a quote from Shay, who is the leading heir in Pescadero. The town in which I live, Pescadero, California, is a tiny area on the California coast. We have been an agricultural town for many years, and nitrates from agricultural practices gradually have accumulated in local groundwater, and as a result, there is currently a serious issue with access to potable water in Pescadero. Many local ranches have unclean water pipes, and my high school has not had clean tap water for years. The fertilizer runoff issue is not an abstract speculation, but a reality of life to residents of the town I grew up in. This is affecting people now, and it's affecting kids, and it's affecting our future. And it's not an issue that we can afford to look over any longer. It's time for immediate action. I have been working with the Pescadero chapter and my fellow heir Ashlyn on a fertilizer initiative. And this initiative, our goal is to have the amount of chemical fertilizer used in California reduced. And we've been talking to federal and state legislators about this issue. We created a fact sheet, and we've been presenting and educating the public. And we also have been working with the Ocean Protection Council. And we made a public comment about a month ago asking them to have their strategic plan for 5 years to have more immediate action for this nutrient runoff problem. And if this is an issue that you believe is important, I ask you to please go to the Ocean Protection Council's website and draft up and ask them to change objectives 4.3 and 4.4 to have them take more immediate action to the issues of harmful algal blooms that are affecting our waters and also the health of my friends. This is an issue that's affecting everyone, and we don't have the time to keep just researching. We need to take immediate action because this is an issue that is happening right now.
Testing.
You can visit Heirs to Our Oceans at www.h2oo.org, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook. I would like to deeply thank David Helvarg for having me here on this panel, but also being a huge supporter of Heirs to Our Oceans since the very, very beginning in 2016. And I would like to thank my fellow panelists for the work you're doing to help our generation and the oceans. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight. Thank you.
Okay. But let me ask you, Dakota, what between the ages of 9 and 10 kind of turned you around politically?
I've always had a passion for the ocean, and it started when I was about 4. And we'd go to the tide pools, and we'd look around and look at the sea stars. And when I was about 8 or 9, I took a sailing camp in the San Francisco Bay in these tiny little Pico boats. And when we were out there, a pod of harbor porpoises came up right next to us, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my entire life. So I went home, and I wanted to learn more about harbor porpoises. So I went home, and I started looking into them, and what I found was that it was just recently that they had come back to the San Francisco Bay after being gone for a very, very long time. And I wanted to know more about these beautiful creatures, so I got really into marine mammals. And one creature that fascinated me the most was the sea otter, because not only is it the cutest animal on the planet, it's super, super important. And so I contacted Dr. Melissa Miller, who is a sea otter pathologist, and I got to witness her doing a sea otter necropsy, where she looked and tried to find the cause of death. And that was the most amazing thing I've ever done probably in my entire life, because I learned so much, and it just sparked this passion in me to protect sea otters so that they can be around for my generation and for my grandkids and great-grandkids. And yeah, I've worked ever since towards the conservation of sea otters, and that's what really got me interested in the issue of chemical fertilizer runoff, because it's an issue that not only is affecting human health but also affecting sea otters. That is a very personal subject to me.
And Blake, I don't really know your background, so this is a twofer.
All right. Thanks. Well, I didn't figure out how to be a badass as quite an early age as Dakota did.